After a recent off-road trip to Sedona, my inner fender liners started to fail me. Obviously, I've done some trimming to them and whatnot since I have the aftermarket high clearance DRT bumper here. But some of the holes have started to rip through, these have started to dangle, and while I was off-roading, these things were rubbing the tires when I was hitting bumps when I was turning. So today, we're gonna be replacing these. We're gonna be putting in a better upgraded option. Stay tuned if you're interested in checking that out. If you're upgrading to bigger tires, right now I'm on 33s, and I've had a slight bit of rub, but if you're going 35s, going something bigger, you're possibly looking at doing a fender trim on your Tacoma, then these liners are gonna be something you're gonna want. They're gonna be a nice high clearance liner that replaces the plastic. They look much better, and they give you more clearance. What is going on, guys? Welcome back for another video. If you're new here, my name's Chris. Right behind me, this is the Fortune Taco, and we have some new parts here for the truck. I already mentioned in the intro, we're gonna be replacing those inner fender liners on the front end of the truck, and we're gonna be installing these aluminum fender liners by Scorched Fabrication. If you guys are not familiar with Scorched, they make fender liners for the front, the rear, and their newest product that I already have on my truck is gonna be their headlight shields. If you put an aftermarket bumper on your truck, or you did a high clearance cut on your factory bumper, and you had to do some trimming up here, now the underside of your headlights are exposed and all the wiring, they make these headlight shields which protect from any type of damage, water, mud, dirt, and whatnot. I did do a video on that. I'll link that down below if you're interested in seeing my first install with Scorched. But today, we're gonna be getting rid of this flimsy plastic liner and putting these high clearance liners on the truck. It's gonna be a pretty simple install. Yes, I know there's a drill here on the table. Some people might be freaked out, but it is a not too big of a bit, and we have to drill one hole through a very thin piece of metal to attach one of the brackets on here. It is not that intimidating, it's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna show you guys when it comes to it, but other than that, everything else is all what you call plug and play. It's all bolt-on going into factory bolt holes, other than that one spot where we have to drill a hole on each, the driver's side and passenger side. But we just need a couple tools here. We have some needle nose pliers. Those are gonna be used just to punch out a little plastic connector that's in a hole we're gonna use as a bolt hole. You need a 4mm Allen wrench, a 1/2 inch open end wrench, 7/16 wrench, and a 10mm wrench. As an additional, I also have my little ratchet set here. I'm gonna be using the 10mm here with the ratchet. And then everything else is provided by Scorched Fabrication. We have the driver's side, and the nice part is, John with Scorched does a very good job at labeling all of his stuff. So the back side here, they have stickers on it. This is driver's side B, driver's side A. Obviously A and B go together. And then these are both passenger side A and B. For the removal of the factory up along the fender here, there's a couple 10mm bolts holding this in. And then for the most part, the rest of it is just gonna be some plastic snapping clips all here further back. Once you take out a couple of those, this thing should just pull out fairly easy. One small addition to mine, I do have some rock lights mounted up here into my liners. So if you do have rock lights, just make sure that's something you do think about. You'll have to remove your old ones from the plastic and relocate them to these liners. Guys, do me a favor right now, drop a comment down below telling me what size tire you guys are running on your truck for the sake of engagement. I already mentioned it, but I have 33s here on the Tacoma currently. There's a possibility of upgrading these in the future, going up to 35. I'm just curious to know, anybody watching this video, what size tire are you guys running on your rig right now? All right, so we got that factory liner out. That thing will now be trash. We have a nice big void here up in the fender, and we're gonna get those liners installed so we don't have this big open pocket here in the fender. If you guys just have a factory intake, you're gonna have a little scoop right here. The liner's gonna go just below it to protect that, so no mud or dirt is gonna be getting in there. Don't worry about that. I do have a snorkel here, so I'm sure mine's gonna look a little different than what your guys' looks like. So once you pull out that factory liner back in here, you're gonna notice there is a piece of black styrofoam, I'm assuming just for some sound dampening noise here. You're gonna have to take this and pull this out because the 2 bolts on the lower end we need to get to are gonna be back behind the styrofoam. So the styrofoam is gonna be getting pulled out, and more than likely this thing will be getting tossed in the trash. The easiest way to get that piece of styrofoam out is by lifting it up and then feeding it out of here. All right, so we have 3 brackets we're gonna prep before we put our liners in. You're gonna see this white clip here. We need to pinch that probably with some pliers and pop that through into the engine bay. It just is securing a wire loom against this fender side here. So there's 2 bolts here on one of the hinges for the door. We're gonna be using one of those. And then there's a bolt up here on this support from the fender, securing it to the truck. We're gonna be using that bolt, and that will pretty much connect up the whole back side. And then the 2 front and back connect together with some bolts. And then the very front, we're gonna get to drilling 1 hole here to secure that one. But what I first wanna start with is popping out this little white clip, and then we can attach our first bracket here to the truck. Using some pliers, you wanna pinch both sides. It's much easier to do with pliers than your fingers, until you can pop it into the hole and then push the rest of it in. But once we have a hole here, we'll be able to stick our bolt through there so we can attach the bracket. So as you can see here, we have 3 unique brackets. One is just a single bend with a 90. One has a 90 plus another bend at an unknown angle. And then this one has 2 non-90 bends. We're gonna be using the one with just a single 90 bend. So taking your bracket, you're gonna want to take the bolt with just a single washer, and that's what we're gonna put into the hole we just popped this clip out of. Then we're gonna take the remaining washer and this nylock nut, and we're gonna put these in the engine bay on the backside. Normally on most Tacomas, you're not gonna have anything here. This will be a big void, and you can access it right down here. You'll see where you popped it through. If you have this big void here, it'll be easier to access. I have this unfortunate wiring setup, so mine's gonna be a little more difficult to get to, but with access to that bolt, you're just gonna apply the washer and the nylock nut, and just kind of tighten that up by hand so it's secured and held in place. Just get that attached for now. We're gonna move on to these other ones back here in the back side of the fender. All right, starting off first with this fender bracket here, there's a 10mm bolt in here. We need to loosen and take that bolt out. All right, once we have that 10mm bolt out, we are gonna utilize this to attach our bracket. Your middle bracket is gonna be the one we talked about with the 190 degree there on the left and the other angle there on the right. And the way we wanna install this bracket, your 90 degree is gonna be back where that factory bolt location's at. You wanna take it like this and put it in just like that. Like we talked about the door hinge. You're gonna have 2 bolts on the door hinge. We're gonna wanna utilize that upper bolt on this hinge. Using either a wrench or a 12mm socket, you need to remove that top bolt. Now for this third bracket, it should be pretty easy to guess because it's the only other bracket left, but it's the one with the 2 odd angles. You're gonna have one that already has hardware in it. That's what's gonna attach to the liners. This one with the long oval opening is what we're gonna use that factory bolt we just took out of the hinge on. You're gonna put that in there and then feed that back into the hole from the hinge. Tighten that till it's nice and snug, and then back off just a little bit just to keep it loose so it can move around a little bit. So once we have this top bracket tightened up here, you're gonna wanna take a tape measure, and from the center of this riv nut to the center of the lower riv nut, you're gonna wanna see about 8, maybe 8 1/4. So you're gonna want to adjust that lower bracket as you see fit, but you're gonna wanna see the distance of at least 8 inches, maybe just a little more than 8 inches. Once you got those riv nuts about 8 inches apart, you're gonna wanna go ahead and tighten up that lower bracket. I'm gonna put this back in here for a test fit. The ice cream man's coming around as a rainstorm is starting to come into the town. Doesn't sound very smart, but both riv nuts there in both of my holes, so it looks like our alignment's good. We're gonna wanna take this back out though so we can connect both part A and part B together before we officially put it up in here. All right, so when it comes to connecting part A and part B, there's gonna be this little spacer bracket. You can see there's obviously 2 and 2 on here, They're gonna align with these holes at either end of the bracket. We're gonna put that spacer on the back side so we can connect both of these two together before we toss these up into the truck. All right, so taking this spacer bracket with all the hardware taken out, the riv nuts with the back ends kind of facing away, you're gonna wanna place it on the back side of these two panels. And then you're gonna have 4 bolts, 4 washers. You're gonna place a bolt and a washer through each hole and then screw those into the riv nuts on the back side. All right, now with those two officially being connected, we can take this one whole piece and bring this over to the truck. All right, now this is gonna be a much bigger piece to fit up in here. So it might be a little more challenging. So that was a little bit of work there, but now that we got it fed up in, you're gonna wanna start to insert all the hardware into their respective brackets that we installed previously. The next thing we need to do is tighten up that high center one that we had to go into the engine bay for, and then we can get to the front portion. We have to drill one hole in the front portion so we can mount up the front to make sure this thing is nice and secure. What you're gonna wanna do is you have to feed this thing up in here. You might have to push and wiggle it a little bit. Where I pretty much came to a stop on mine is right above this little screw coming through the fender. If you can see here, this little curve on the fender, this is where your intake tube's at. So if you actually have the factory intake tube, you might not be able to push up this high. Mine is silicone because of my snorkel, so I can kind of push it right up to that edge. So just know that if you're getting to this point and you can't go up any further, you're probably running into that intake tube. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna grab the drill with the 9/32 drill bit. I'm gonna drill out a hole in the bottom portion here so we can then install the last portion of our hardware, and we can call this install complete. This is just the extra hardware that was sitting in those Ziploc baggies. You're gonna have a bolt, 2 washers, and a nylock nut. And then using just a bolt with 1 washer, we're gonna feed that through the hole we just drilled. And then on the back side, you're gonna wanna do a washer with that nylock nut and get that hardware tightened up. If you do have the Scorched headlight shields already installed, the hole we just drilled is gonna be up above this headlight shield. We're gonna have to temporarily remove some of this hardware to move the headlight shield so we can tighten that hardware from the hole we just drilled. That is gonna be it. We now have the high clearance Scorched Fabrication liners here in the Fortune Taco. If you still have full factory fenders like I do, at least for now, you're gonna wanna make sure to go back through, tighten up, and add all these 10mm bolts in to firmly hold your fender on there. Obviously, you wanna do it same thing to the other side. There's not gonna be much of a difference, just other than this upper bracket here. The hole's gonna look a little different on the driver's side, but it's gonna be right in the same exact position, and there's no wiring harness to pop out. Finally got around to it, and I think doing that Sedona trip and my plastic liners just starting to fall apart and rub against my wheel was my cue. It's time to get this thing done and get these things put on here. We do have some plans down the road. I don't know exactly when it's gonna happen, but we're on 33s right now. I do wanna go up to 35s, which means we're probably gonna have to do some trimming here on the fender. If you haven't done so already, go ahead, drop a thumbs up. It helps this video be more successful to get seen by people just like yourself. If you have any questions about the Scorched Fabrication liners or just anything in general for myself or the build, drop a comment down below. I try my best to reply to every comment that's left on my videos. And last but not least, if this is the first time you've ever seen one of my videos, or maybe you watched a couple before but you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead, click that subscribe button. You'll be able to see anytime I release future content right here on the channel. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end. I appreciate you, and I hope to see you on my next video.